Hello, my name is Jayashree Iyengar. I'm the owner of Popping Mustard Seeds. I teach Indian cooking classes in the Pittsburgh area. Today, we're going to show you in this video of how to make idlis. Idlis are a South Indian breakfast food, an ancient breakfast food, I should say. It's made with rice and lentils, but it's a particular kind of rice and particular kind of lentils. I can show you here. This is the kind of rice we use for making idlis typically. You can make it with any kind of rice, but this works best. This is a short grain rice and also called idli rice from the Indian stores, or punni rice. Punni is named after a river in South India. And urad dal is typically the whole urad dal contains black skin on top of it, and this is with the skin removed. It's called urad goda. I also like to use a little bit of fenugreek seeds in with when I'm grinding them up. It gives softness as well as helps in fermentation. So all that I need is maybe like half a teaspoon of fenugreek seeds for maybe a cup of rice. Now the ratio of rice to the dal is typically can be anywhere between 1 to 2 or 1 to 3. I like to use 1 to 2 ratio, meaning 1 part of dal and to 2 parts of rice. Rice is always more than the dal, but when I use 1 to 2, I find the idlis are really soft. Now you can also use this batter to make dosas, but this combination is typical for idli making. What you do is first you soak them separately, the rice with the fenugreek and then the dal separately, and then you grind them separately and then mix together. The reason you do it separately is because it's easier to grind when you grind them separately, because the urad dal grinds very easily and rice takes a little longer to grind. You do need a very powerful blender to grind them. The reason you need a powerful blender is because the rice takes a while to grind and you just want to make sure the blender doesn't get overheated. One thing you want to make sure when you grind it for both the dal and the rice separately, we will be showing you how to do that. You want to make sure it bubbles up when you're grinding it. You'll see it in the video. That tells you that it's ground really well. But before I grind it, I like to drain off the water that it was soaked in, then add little water at a time. You don't want to overwater when you grind. You want just enough water for it to be able to grind. And if you put too little water, it's not going to grind well and the bubbles are not going to appear. And if you put too much water, it's going to thin out the batter too much. A thick batter, like a pancake batter consistency, is good for fermentation. Talking about the batter, this batter I ground yesterday in the morning and I put it in the warm place like I was telling you before. And you see this rubber band? This is where the batter was when I started yesterday. Now that I measured was about 3 inches. Now, and it has risen really well since yesterday, and it's when I see how well it's risen, and also you can smell the sweet and sour batter, then you know the batter is ready. If you are not going to make the idlis immediately, you may want to refrigerate it at this time to stop proofing it anymore or fermenting any further. Otherwise, fresh batter is great to use. You can also store it in the fridge after you use it once, and you can use it a few more times for 3 or 4 days. It'll last well in the refrigerator. This batter was made with 3/4 cup of urad dal and about 1.5 cups of rice and just like a teaspoon of fenugreek in it. So this amount I will make 32 idlis. So this is an idli mold, and this stack makes 16 idlis at a time. You can make about 32 idlis with this. Now I'm going to measure how much it's fermented just to show you. So I'm going to dip my spoon in here, and it's up to here. So if I compare it to what I had yesterday, get a paper towel here so I don't make much of a mess. And you see, it's about an inch taller than where it was yesterday. So that, I know just from looking at it, it's fermented well. But that just gives me an additional proof that yes, this has fermented really well. I'm very pleased with this fermentation, and now I'm going to show you how to make the idlis with this batter. So here's this idli maker. You can buy it online, or you can also find it typically in most Indian stores. You should be able to find the idli maker. And I'm going to mix the batter well. You want to pre-oil. This is already pre-oiled. So you want to oil the molds first. Just a little bit of any kind of oil will do. This batter is quite thick. Like I said, maybe a pancake batter consistency. I'm going to add just a little water to it. Maybe that was a couple tablespoons of water in there. And that should be maybe a little bit more. Just a little bit more. And the consistency should be okay now. So I'm going to fill each mold with the batter, and then we're going to steam it. We'll get to that once we are done with this part. So here's So once you have the batter set in the mold, you want to steam it. So there are a couple different ways you can steam it. You can steam it in the pressure cooker if you have a pressure cooker of this size, or you can take a pot. This is kind of a bigger pot. You don't need such a big pot, even a pot of the pressure cooker size. Make sure you have a lid. And you want to have some water in the bottom of the pot and the pressure cooker, either of them. You need a little bit of water. And we are going to place, so I'm going to show you how to make it in the pot today. So we're going to place this, and if you have instant pot at home or another way of steaming it, it doesn't matter which way of steaming it, the idlis have to be steamed. So I'm going to place it on the stove to cook it for 10 to 12 minutes. I'm going to put 12 minutes just in case. After the water boils and the steam, I see some steam coming out. So I'm going to wait till the water is nice and hot and boiling, and then I'm going to set my timer for 10 to 12 minutes. And then you can turn off the stove after that, and then we'll show you what happens. Idli is ready now. We're going to open the cooker, and I am going to carefully lift the part of here. It's very hot, so be careful. And now I'm going to remove this and have something like this, or a spatula, small spatula handy. You can just go around. Spatula works even better than this typically. So I'm going to remove all the idlis from this tray They look beautiful, beautifully done. You see how spongy and puffy they are, which tells me they're going to taste really good. Idli is typically eaten with chutney and sambar. We don't have sambar and we don't have the typical coconut chutney that in South India it's eaten with. But I do have some tomato chutney here, and all that you have to do is just take off a little bit here and then dip it in your chutney. Yeah. The idli turned out really perfect. The two things that are important for idlis are how well the batter is fermented, because if it's not fermented well, the idlis could be really hard. And the other thing is to make sure you're eating it with something really fun like sambar and chutney. Thank you all for watching this video, and I hope you can all make idlis at home and enjoy it.
Hi, Jay. I think you're muted. There
Hi,
we go.
Imran. How are you?
Good. Yeah, so we're going to do a little quick Q&A. I have some questions coming from the audience. So
I'm sorry, one of the questions I said I'll answer live. I was going to type in, but I can answer them live. I see three questions. No,
yeah,
two
let's
questions.
go ahead with that one. Let's do that. So they asked, what are some other popular Indian breads and what grains are used to make them?
So this is a good question because it's not clear if this is a bread, you want to call it a bread. It's made with grains and therefore bread is not a bad, I don't know what else to call it. So this is typically made with rice and lentils and a mixture of rice and lentils. And the other bread that's made similarly is dosas, but it's not steamed. It's more like a crepe or a pancake. You make it on a griddle. Very similar with the exact same ingredients, except the ratios can differ. Rice is what makes it gives a crispiness. So for dosas, we add more rice, even 1 to 4 parts of rice, whereas for idlis, we just did 1 to 2 parts of rice. The other bread we do make is similar to this steamed bread is called doklas. They are made in the western part of India. It's called Gujarat, and that's made with chickpea flour. And in the, I think, ancient ways making was fermentation, but now they can help it with something called eno salt to ferment it and then steam it. The other kind of breads Indians make are, you might know, familiar with, naans and rotis. Those are all made typically with wheat flour, but there are many communities that do make with other kind of flour, like buckwheat and millet flours and so on. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much. Okay, so I think you answered the second question with talking about how fermentation is used. Someone else asked, how much water do you use with the 3/4 cup lentils and the 1.5 cup rice?
So when you're soaking it, it doesn't matter how much water you soak it. You want to make sure it's fully covered and maybe like half an inch more. So if it might absorb some of the water, but when you're grinding, like I said, you want to drain all the water first and then start grinding it. So the amount of water you use could vary depending on the quality of the rice and when you buy it and how fresh it is. Same thing with the lentils. So I would start with a minimum of a 1/4 cup and then slowly add water to it so the batter doesn't get overly thick. But you do want to have enough water for it to be able to grind. Otherwise, it'll get caught in the grinder like any other food. And also, you want that bubbles to come like we saw in the video when you're grinding it, which is really important for it to aid the fermentation. So you want it bubbly and smooth Rice typically doesn't grind as smoothly as lentils, but it look very smooth, like a paste. If you touch it, it may be very, very slightly coarse, but that's okay. That's how much it grinds. Make sure your blender, you use a powerful blender, otherwise it will burn it, the motor. So because the rice takes a longer time to grind.
Awesome. Thank you. So I think just to answer a couple of other people asked, we will be sending out the recipe after the event in an email. But Jay, do you want to just quickly mention like how people can follow you and Popping Mustard Seeds and the other work that you're doing?
Sure, sure. So my business is Popping Mustard Seeds, and I now teach Indian cooking classes in the Pittsburgh area. And you can follow me on Instagram, Popping Mustard Seeds, at Popping Mustard Seeds, or I have a website. It's called poppingmustardseeds.com. I also work as a maker in residence for Craft, who's organizing this conference. And so we are working on expanding my business. So more to come. Keep an eye, and hopefully soon I'll have email, you can contact me via my website at poppingmustardseeds@gmail.com. But once I have on my website a list of, contacts, I can also send you updates, which is not ready yet, but it's coming.
All in the works. That sounds great. Thank you so much, Jay. Great. So we're going to have a little bit of a break, and then we're going to move into our next panel, which is women of color working in grain. So thank you so much. Jay,
I see one question. Is there another kind of grinder than a high-powered blender that would work well? Well, there's an Indian grinder you can get, which is actually got two stones, rotating stones, and it's like a real, it's an imitation of a grinder, I guess, hand grinder. But if you online, I don't have one of those to show you, unfortunately. I use the Vitamix for mine, which is great blender because it has high power. But there are other ones in the market like that too. But this one I'm talking about, you can say dosa grinder or idli grinder, and it'll come up.
Awesome. It looks like
got a mini version of it too.
It looks like someone else is asking a follow-up question. Would using a mortar and pestle be the traditional way of grinding the flour for these?
I think it would do me a lot of work using a mortar and pestle. However, if you look at the old Indian hand, grinders, they are made of stone with a little hole in the middle. I wish I had a picture to show you. And then it does look like a mortar and pestle, and that's what they use. But you need a big size. Just using nice stone mortar and pestle might work. But like I said, it's going to be a lot more difficult to do, but it's doable. Of course, they did it that way in those days.
Awesome. All right. Well, I think that's the bulk of the questions. Like I said, we'll email out the recipe and the best way to contact Jay for anyone who has any other follow-up questions. And then we will get started with our next panel at 2:00.
Thank you so much, everyone. This was such an honor for me to do this for Craft.
I'm so happy to have you.
Thank you. Bye.